how far do you think Notre Dame can go this year? Could they be a team that gets to the college football playoffs? Could they potentially be a national championship contender? And I know when you look at Notre Dame every single year, the first indicator that comes to your mind is, oh, they're overrated. JT, you remember what Notre Dame has done in the past? Anytime they go to the playoffs against the big boys, they get dominated. So what makes you think that Notre Dame is going to be able to be good enough to be a potential college football playoff contender? Or what makes you think that this team could only have maybe one loss this year? Well, I think the fact that you add Sam Hartman via the transfer portal from Wake Forest to your roster is a big plus. Sam Hartman has been one of the best quarterbacks statistically in all of college football, and he probably is the most talented quarterback that Notre Dame has had since probably Brady Quinn, which may be high praise, but I think it isn't that much of a hot take. The past quarterbacks that Notre Dame has had haven't really been that great. And last year, they didn't really get fantastic out of this world quarterback play. As a matter of fact, Ian Book is probably the best QB that Notre Dame has had in over the last decade. Sam Hartman, being one of the best quarterbacks in college football, puts Notre Dame in a situation where there's not a game that they don't have a chance at winning. Honestly, anytime you can get good, productive, high-level quarterback play on a week-to-week basis, there's not going to be a single game that you're not going to have a shot at winning. And for Notre Dame, for them to potentially be a playoff team or a team that can get to a New Year's Six bowl game with 2 or 1 loss, they're going to have to be able to beat some of the best teams in college football, because Notre Dame doesn't have an easy schedule. If you say that Notre Dame has an easy schedule, you're being insanely biased. This is one of the most difficult schedules in all of college football. Notre Dame has an elite offensive line, one of the best in the nation, a great defense, and now you got Sam Hartman. This is a really good team. Now, are they going to be able to beat Ohio State? They do play them at home this year. I think they got a really good chance at doing that, because Ohio State, you got to go on the road in a hostile environment with quarterbacks that haven't really played in a big game atmosphere on the road. And we already know that Notre Dame, they have a really great fan base. They sell out their home games a lot. So I don't think that when you look at Notre Dame, they're not going to be able to get up for that game this season. Last year, I don't even think they played bad against Ohio State. I felt if they had better quarterback play, there was a good chance they could have won that game. Their defense was able to keep them in that game for a good while. So with Sam Hartman this season, even though Ohio State should be improved defensively with defensive coordinator Jim Knowles in year 2 with that program, I think that Notre Dame's offense this year is going to be insanely better, given the fact that you have a better signal caller this year. The wide receiving core is a little bit of a question mark, but it's not for the typical reasons that you think. Notre Dame has a lot of talent at wide receiver this year. It's just that they don't have a lot of proven production at wideout this year. And when you got a good offensive line, you know that your run game is going to be really good, and your quarterback is going to have a lot of time to throw the football, which is going to give these receivers a lot of time to get open. And I think Ohio State, a little bit of a concern for them is how good is their secondary going to be? We know how good they are up front, but their defensive line potentially could be neutralized with how good this offensive line is. So how's that secondary going to look on the back end? Which their secondary was their Achilles heel last year. What about Duke? Duke is a game that Fighting Irish fans probably look at and they say it's going to be tough, but we expect to win that game. Well, don't sleep on Duke. Duke is one of those teams that if you sleep on them, they can definitely upset you. They may not be more talented than you, but this is a team that isn't going to beat themselves. They're going to be well coached. And anytime you have a team that doesn't beat themselves and they're well coached, it's normally tough to beat them. And then you got to play them on the road in Duke. Now, Duke doesn't have a hostile road environment, but if Duke has the kind of season this year that they had last year, or even better, I expect for that home crowd to be rocking. Louisville is a really interesting game for Notre Dame. This is probably one of the most underrated games on Notre Dame's schedule that a lot of you Fighting Irish fans probably aren't paying a lot of attention to. You want to know why? Because they have the upset master at head coach and Jeff Brom. You see, if Notre Dame is going to be a college football playoff contender this year, and if their ceiling is 11-1 or 12-0, they're going to have to not only just beat Ohio State and USC and Clemson, but they're going to have to avoid suffering some upsets. And Louisville definitely is the kind of team that could kind of alter your college football playoff aspirations if you sleep on them. Jeff Brom, you remember what this dude did at Purdue. If you don't, he has a winning record against top 25 opponents, or at least a 500 record against top 25 opponents. This is the dude who was the head coach when Purdue upset Ohio State when he had Dwayne Haskins at quarterback. So there's a reason why they call Jeff Brom the upset master, and you have to play them on the road. And Louisville is a really underrated team. This is the biggest sleeper team entering the ACC this year. They got a good quarterback out of the transfer portal from Cal. They got a pretty good roster. Even though it's year one for Jeff Brom, they probably could end up winning 8, maybe 9 games. So this is going to be a really big test for Notre Dame. And then after they play Louisville, they got to play USC, which is probably the second toughest game on their schedule, right behind Ohio State. Are you going to be able to slow down USC's offense? Are you going to have the secondary that's going to be able to slow down USC's wide receivers? Can your pass rush neutralize Caleb Williams, keep him from getting outside the pocket and making a bunch of all-platform plays when things break down? You should be able to beat Pitt. I don't think Pitt's going to be that good this year. I think this finally could be a season where we start to see Pittsburgh kind of come back down to earth a little bit. But Clemson is another really tough game. Now, Clemson, you know they're going to be really good defensively. You know they're going to be really good up front. But offensively, we don't know what they're going to look like, even though they do have a new offensive coordinator. And the dude who was the former OC for TCU, Garrett Riley. So if that offense gets clicking, this game could be a little bit different for Notre Dame this year compared to when you blasted them last season out of nowhere. Nobody saw it coming. So if Notre Dame is going to be a team that can make it to the college football playoffs this year, they got to be able to pull off some really big upsets, which they do have a chance at happening, but I don't think Notre Dame's ceiling is 11-1 and 12-0 like I saw some Notre Dame fans commenting on my recent video that we did about Notre Dame a couple of weeks ago. I think that their ceiling is 10-2. I think if everything goes well, this is a 2-loss team. And the reason why I say that is just because I just think they're going to lose 1 out of 3 of these matchups to either Clemson, Ohio State, or USC. I think they're going to lose at least one of those games. All right, I don't think they're going to go 3-0 against Ohio State, USC, and Clemson. Even though you do get to host Ohio State and USC at home, I think you're bound to drop at least one of those games. And if you win both of those games, I at least think you'll lose to Clemson. So I don't think you're going to go unscathed during the stretch where you have to play Ohio State, USC, and Clemson on the road. And I also think they could suffer a small upset to a school like maybe a Louisville or a Duke. I don't think NC State is going to be capable of being able to pull off the upset, even though they do have Brendan Armstrong at QB. I don't think they have a good enough roster. So I think Notre Dame probably could roster them to death and beat them by at least 2-3 scores. But playing against a school like Duke and Louisville that's really well coached, Louisville has a good amount of talent. I think their offensive line could be pretty solid. That could be another potential upset for Notre Dame this year. So I just think my ceiling for Notre Dame is probably going to be 10-2. Now, if they could end up going 11-1, 12-0, that would really surprise me. Because Marcus Freeman, that would show us that he has made a lot of growth in his second season compared to where this program was at year one under him. But I just think seeing this program go from where they were last year with the inconsistencies they had to just being an undefeated team or a one-loss team and making it into the playoffs, I really can't see that happening. I think the ceiling for Notre Dame this year is 10-2. And if you're a Notre Dame fan, you're probably saying, man, JT, if 10-2's the ceiling, I mean, what's the worst case scenario? Well, the worst case scenario is you could lose to Ohio State, USC, and Clemson. Those are all losable games. And I'm pretty sure you Fighting Irish fans agree. There's a good chance that you could very well lose to all three of those schools. But I would like to think that with the talent that they have on this team this year, and this being one of the better Notre Dame teams that we've seen in recent memory, they could at least win 1 out of 3 of those games. But I think they're probably going to lose to either Ohio State, USC, or Clemson. They're not going to go 3-0 during that stretch. And I think there's a good chance that they could end up suffering an upset to a Duke, a Louisville. I don't know if Pitt will be able to pull it off, but I'm not going to count out Pat Narduzzi. But my ceiling for Notre Dame is 10 wins. Now, if they go past 10 wins, that will really surprise me. And I would be wrong about Notre Dame. But what's your ceiling for Notre Dame football in 2023? Let me know down in the comment section down below.